All right. So thanks for joining me today, Ben. I think today what I wanted to do was maybe just get your thoughts. Well, I'll start with this. We decided to schedule this a little in advance because we saw the game against the Canucks last week as being a big one, and it ended up being a pretty important game in the standings. So we thought we'd schedule this as a kind of debrief from said big game. So now with that game in the rearview mirror, Ben, I'll ask you, what is your level of optimism around this team and their push for the final playoff spot?
I think the immediate reaction after regulation and seeing that we're going overtime was that we're destined to do this dance for a little while longer. It was. I know there's no ties in hockey, so the expression "kissing your sister" doesn't really apply. But even then, like before even knowing who was going to win the game, you knew that they weren't going to get much, if any, separation from the other team.
It did feel a little like that. It did feel even as overtime was playing out. Obviously, the extra point was huge, but it did also feel like, okay, a bit of the wind out of the sails of this game have kind of left.
No, yeah, for sure. And I remember even shortly before the Canucks tie it, like feeling like okay, like the Flames are going to get at least a point out of this. Like at worst, this won't be a major setback.
Yeah.
Of course, when they're engaged in the mid off that they currently are, it doesn't necessarily give you a lot of optimism, but it just prolongs what we're already doing.
Yeah, it definitely, there's been a couple points in this season where, as a team rebuild, team tank, call me whatever you want to call me, as a member of that tribe of this fan base, you like take a peek of the schedule and like, oh, okay, here, this might be it. They might fall off here, and we can all take a big sigh of relief that they won't be in the classic Flames position we found them in so many times. There's been a couple moments like that, but as that game went to overtime and this race just got tighter and tighter, as you so eloquently said, it seems as though we are destined to do this for a little bit longer. I guess so. On the Instagram today, I put up a poll of how people think how the season will end. With three options. Flames get that final playoff spot. Flames do finally bottom out and secure their own first this year, or they end up in the very familiar position of being in the middle. You were brave enough to say that you truly believe this team will end up taking that final playoff spot. I guess my question to you would be, if we played the playoff race from here on out 100 times, how many times do you think the Flames secure that spot?
Oh, maybe 5. Coin flip. like the thing about these two teams is that Vancouver isn't going to be good the rest of the way either.
No.
That's the thing. Is Calgary will probably turn around and lose in overtime to Colorado, and have that be
something like that.
And that'll be a pretty decent result. Then Vancouver will probably win their next game, and then they'll still be tied.
Yeah. They'll be close enough to be. They'll be close enough to be tied.
Yeah. And then it'll just go on like that. The thing that we've so eloquently called a mid off, all the participants are in fact mid. It's not just the Flames.
Yeah. No. Exactly. Actually, I posted this a couple other days too. It's like whoever ends up being that 8th seed, provided one of these teams just doesn't go on some big win streak to go out the year, is going to be on pace for 89 points to secure that final playoff spot. Whoever of these 4 teams emerges, just because you've emerged from this group of 4 doesn't make you a good team. It just makes you the king of the mid. And that's how it feels like watching these teams. It's like none of these. I haven't watched enough of Utah. I think their underlying stats are pretty good. But that aside, it feels like none of these teams inspire confidence in their fans, people across the league. It's just the definition of a turtle race.
Yeah, no, like, yeah, I think making the playoffs is probably their ceiling. But like, I would stress though that like whether you were team tank or not going into the season, with where we currently stand, what does success look like? I think that has to be the playoffs.
Yeah, actually, elaborate on that a little more.
Well, they're not going to get a good draft pick, no matter what they do at this point. So you've got guys on the team that are hopefully going to be on a future contender. You got Dustin Wolf, you got Zary, you've got hopefully Frost and Farabee, guys like that. I think what you could call success for the rest of this year is getting those guys like 4, hopefully more playoff games under their belt.
Yeah, because it does feel we're getting late early here. Like this is the final quarter of the season, and it's like, okay, yeah, even if the Flames do struggle down the stretch here and get to, I think the absolute ceiling from a tank perspective at this point is like 9, and it's like, I know the Flames just drafted 9 last year, and that's their number 1 prospect, but still 9 overall. You're getting a good prospect. You're by no means getting a franchise altering prospect at 9 usually. So it's like, yeah, it's like at this point, maybe it is too late. It is too late for the tank and for people like me. My thought process was, and this may be just blind optimism, but if they could just find some way to keep their own pick in the top 10, whether it be 8, 9, 10, whatever, they have lots of draft capital that at least they could potentially move up in the draft if they felt they needed. Oh, we don't need depth in our prospect pool anymore. We just need more game-changing prospects. So, and it's a lot easier to move up from 8 to 6 than it is from wherever Florida's pick is. Could be anywhere between 22 and 32. It's a lot easier to move up from 8 to 6 than it is from 22 to 6. So that is like the absolute last straw that I think I and the rest of Team Tank is holding on to here. And if that is all you have to cheer for, then maybe you just have to throw your hands up and be like, it's a lost season for the rebuild. Just give us something. But the fear, I'll stop there. I'll let you jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, from what you said, like the absolute best pick that we're looking at is 9, and then you're talking about trading away the other assets to move up from there. So yeah,
it's pretty bleak.
What?
It's pretty bleak from a tank perspective. It's pretty bleak from a tank perspective.
Yeah, so I don't know, like this is a year where they're going to have, or what, they're going to have 2 first-round picks at least.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is a year where, like, okay,
provided New Jersey doesn't fall in the top 10, which they very likely will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you're not going to get the absolute stud that's going to be a game changer this year, but you're going to add 2 first-round picks to your prospect pool. And in the meantime, get the guys who are currently in the NHL some playoff experience under the belt. So in like 3-4 years, when hopefully we're icing a contender, that's probably an optimistic timeline. Some of those core guys, have played in the playoffs. Losing isn't the only thing they know.
Yeah. And it would just be nice too. Like, as a fan just for 4 playoff games, even if they get swept. Like playoff games get your blood.
I want to go stand outside the Saddledome.
Yeah, exactly. Even if they get swept by Winnipeg, getting swept by Winnipeg is still better than finishing 9th in the West. Like
exactly.
It's not even a debate from a fan enjoyment perspective. And I want to ask you about this too. So last time I was on this with Brendan, I said something that I do fully mean, but I feel like I should clarify. That I said last time I'm not having fun this season, and I do truly mean that. But what I want to clarify is I'm not saying that you as Flames fans out there, if you're listening, watching this, like you shouldn't be having fun either. Like that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying me personally, I'm not having fun this year. And the reason for that is not because tanking is the solution to everything and it's guaranteed for success, because it's not. The reason I'm not having fun is because there's exactly one scenario. There's exactly one way the season ends in a complete, utter disaster. And that is finishing 11-16, as we all know, in the overall standings, bottom 11-16. That is an unmitigated disaster. It's not just bad that if we send our pick to Montreal and end up getting Florida's, it's not like, oh, that's too bad. That it will be an unmitigated disaster if that happens. And yet 65 games through this season, it's still a possibility. So I thought going into the season that we would at least be safe by this point. At least we could take a deep sigh of a deep breath, a huge sigh of relief, and be safe from this absolute nightmare unfolding. And the nightmare has persisted the entire way, which has made the season not very fun for me. But like I said, I'm not saying all Flames fans should feel this way. There's a lot of people out there, and I genuinely commend them. I'm not trying to be sarcastic or anything like that. There's a lot of Flames fans out there who can get behind this underdog team and like a rookie of the year goalie candidate that's fun to watch every night and be like, this is a fun season. So I truly do respect and empathize with those people. I'm just not one of them, but I feel like you kind of are. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, I unapologetically want the Flames to win every single game they ever play.
As true fans should, like, yeah.
Like with that being said, like I would truly understand a tank or rebuild or whatever, and like I understand that a fully rebuilding team isn't going to win many games, but I'm still going to want them to win every single game.
Yeah. And when the game's on, I want them. Well, I'll be completely honest here. If anything, this is a space for honesty and sharing. When the Flames are playing another NHL team that I like and admire, not that I'm like a fan of many other teams, but there's other teams around the league that I like or I respect how they're built, like Dallas and Carolina and Colorado and New Jersey. And I just root for the Jets and the Senators to do well because they're other small market Canadian teams. If the Flames are playing one of those teams, I'm not outright cheering against the Flames, but I'm like, I'm totally fine with a loss tonight. Like loss tonight, that like in this season specifically, I'm totally good with a loss tonight. But provided they aren't playing one of those teams, I still want them to win. Like the whole point of sports is to win. So go out there and win. It's just it's part of the issue with cheering for a North American sports team is there's a reward to losing, and the Flames desperately need that reward. The one thing the Flames need is the reward, the very specific reward that losing can get you. So that's kind of where I'm come from on watching the season, why it's been so frustrating, and being a proud member of Team Rebuild Tank, whatever you want to call it.
No, for sure. And the thing is, like, they made so many future-oriented moves, and yet they still won.
Yeah. There's like no one for me to be mad at. I can't be mad at like Craig. Like, oh, Craig, how have such a short-term vision and try and win this year. Like, I think it's pretty clear to anyone in the room who follows this team, they weren't trying to win this year in the preseason. Like, they traded everybody last year. They didn't make any big free agent signings. Like, there's no one to be mad at. And it's just what happens. And hockey is a weird, random game, and give a bad team a good goalie and anything can happen.
Yeah, if nothing else, like, this year's been super exciting just for the Dustin Wolf factor.
Yeah, it's goaltending's weird. I think a lot of people mistakenly devalue goaltending. I think goaltending is incredibly valuable. It's just you can find it in very weird places. But that doesn't mean it's any less important than it's a very important position. So having Dustin Wolf isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's a very good thing. Teams all across the NHL would kill for a Dustin Wolf. And the Flames got Dustin, and every other team in the NHL had the opportunity to get Dustin Wolf, and only the Flames got him. It's just you can find really elite goaltending in unconventional ways. Other centerpieces of NHL teams, it's much more difficult to find those centerpieces in less conventional ways, like goaltending. But like I said, it doesn't make goaltending any less important. It's finding good goaltending is still something you want to find, and it seems like the Flames have found that.
It's funny you mentioned like the value of goaltending, because like that's my biggest bone to pick with the deserve to win meter. Is it?
Yeah.
It treats goalies as if they aren't part of the team. It's like like this team that had a 1% on the deserve to win meter 1. I'm like, well, if they had a goalie who made 55 saves, well, that's a member of their team. I think they probably like.
It'd be like in basketball saying all your points count except for the ones scored by point guards.
Yeah, no, like exactly. Like I'm like, well, if you fielded a lineup that included a goalie that made 55 saves, then you probably deserve to win.
Yeah, the goalie wears the same logo as the rest of the team.
Yeah.
It's just like I said, I think some people in the team building community devalue goaltending because you can find an elite goalie in the 7th round or whatever round Connor Hellebuck was picked in. And it's much more common to find goalies in these weird, in the later rounds of the draft or in nothing trades or stuff like and things like that. Whereas number 1 centers, it's much more difficult to find in those unique ways. But just because they can be acquired more cheaply doesn't mean they're any less important. And like we said, like Dustin Wolf is fun to watch. As much as I'm not having fun this year, Dustin Wolf is a fun goalie to watch because he's small and athletic. He moves all around. He makes athletic saves. Like, I'm trying to think. Like, I think his best game this year was probably that game at Winnipeg where the Flames ended up winning 3-1. And I'll pull up, if you want to talk a little bit about some Wolfie love, I can pull up the shots from that game. As I search.
Pull up that damn deserve to win meter.
Hang on. But no, he's a fun goal. He's a fun goalie to watch. And my only, I don't want to say it's a concern, but I guess it is kind of a concern, is like he is still a rookie, and we've seen one hit wonder goalies before. I personally don't believe Dustin Wolf is that, just because of what the goalie community has to say about him, like Kevin Woodley of Clearsight Analytics and other former goalies too. I don't believe that, but it's a possibility. I mean, this is only his one and only rookie season. I just think it's a possibility to consider. But like I said, I fully believe that I think the Flames have found their franchise goalie here, which a year, like the beginning of the season, we didn't know. Like, I think we've slowly taken him for granted already, in that like the beginning of this year, Dustin Wolf was a mystery. Like people were like, well, he might be an NHL goalie, he might not be. Like we don't really know. And now we definitively know he's a good NHL goalie.
Yeah, no, exactly. Going into the year, I don't know what you thought success would look like as far as developing Wolf. As far as developing Wolf, but like I think most people just wanted to see that he could be a full-time NHL goalie and maybe a future number one guy. And then
yeah, I specifically remember coming into this year, I was like, this year he gets a complete free pass. I did not care about a single number of his, like, because like moving up to the NHL at his age is a very difficult thing to do. And we all thought he was going to be behind a bad team. So I was like, the numbers this year don't matter. It's just about, can we see some athleticism? Can he steal a couple games? Can we see some flashes of potential? That's all I wanted. That's all I was asking. And you hear that now, and that's crazy because he's like in Rookie of the Year conversation, and Kevin Woodley is pushing for him to be in the Vezina conversation. Like, and it just sort of happened. Like I said, we've taken it for granted, but if you just time traveled 6 months ago and told people in September Dustin Wolf will be in the Vezina conversation, they would have looked at you like you have three eyes. But it's just like, you say that now and people are like, yeah, he should be.
yeah, and like I'm, as much as I'm so pro Wolf, like I probably won't make the push for him to win the Vezina this year, but he's definitely showing future Vezina potential. Like that's not controversial.
Which is hard to find.
Yeah. So even if you win
stats from that, sorry.
So even if you win more games than you meant to, this season, fingers crossed, is delivering a franchise goalie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which again, we didn't know. We didn't know if we had at the beginning of this year. So that is a positive development. Stats from that one Winnipeg game I was talking about, which I think was the best I've ever seen him in an AHL game. Winnipeg shots on goal 39, Calgary 21 for the game. The Flames walked out of there victorious 3-1 victors. That one is burned in my memory as like, holy shit. This guy is legit, I think.
Yeah, I think that one and Montreal just a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
1-0. That never happens anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing about this Flames team. They are playing hockey that doesn't happen anymore. Like they are legit playing 07 to 09 Kiprusoff hockey 15 years later. And it's like the Flames are the Flames are stuck in 2008 and they have not changed since then. But the entire rest of the league has changed, except for when you come to Calgary, the Flames claw and drag you back to 2008. It is kind of impressive. It is somewhat impressive to watch, even though I think it's 90% Wolf just being a difference maker goalie covering up a lot of warts. But it's comical. It's funny, and that is fun to watch. The funny thing about that Montreal game, so I went to that game with a friend of mine, and we had a couple drinks. So take all this with a big grain of salt. And Wolf definitely made some good saves, but I felt like at no point in that game was I like, Montreal's got, this isn't good. Like at no point, I was just like, Wolf has got this. Like there was not a single moment in that game I felt nervous when, just because even for such a small guy, he makes it look so easy.
Yeah. Like there were definitely some big chances in the third, but I take what you mean just with confidence in him.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which again, I think like if you told somebody back in September that, they would again look at you like you were crazy. So even a Scrooge, miserable prick like myself can take some enjoyment in this season, even if we are barreling towards the most Flames finish of all time. I was actually thinking about this. Like, it's like we all know the Flames have the last 20 years kind of have a special skill of finishing just outside the playoffs, but not with a great draft pick. It's like, it was a joke before this season that, oh, that's the most Flames thing of all time, to be right stuck in the middle. Like that's the Calgary Flames we know and love. And I was thinking about it, and it's like this year, it's almost like the franchise saw a special opportunity. It's like, okay, we finished 9th in the West and drafted 16th before, but get ready for our next trick where we finish 9th in the West and draft 28th overall. It's like another notch. It's like another trophy on the shelf of mid that they haven't claimed yet, that they're so desperately trying to, it feels like, which would just be a comical accomplishment at this point. But enough of that. Let's really dive into this race. We got a little sidetracked there, talking about our love for Wolf and our hate of this team being mid. So, just as a review, at this moment, there are 4 teams in the West fighting for one spot, all within 2 points of each other. St. Louis and Utah. St. Louis has played 2 more games than the Flames. Vancouver, Utah have played 1 more. Vancouver, Calgary, 71. Utah, St. Louis, 69 points. I did the math while we were talking. Right now, the Flames, who are currently in the playoff spot, are on pace for 91 points, which is like, that's a pretty bad playoff team. Usually the last playoff team has around 94, 95 points. 91 playoff points, and then 91 points for the final playoff team is quite bad. Vancouver, the first team out right now, on pace for 89.5. Utah on pace for 87. Again, these are teams in the playoff race. And St. Louis is on pace for just under 86 points. And I feel like that really illustrates how much of a mid-off this is. It's like these teams, like I said, like we said earlier, it's like these teams aren't punching each other to get there. They're really kind of just lightly motioning at each other to fight for that final playoff spot, which is probably why diehard fans of all these teams aren't very confident right now in their club's abilities. It's because no one has shown a huge killer instinct, and all the teams they're fighting are mirrors of each other. And speaking of that, your boots on the ground in Vancouver. I was wondering if maybe you could lend a little insight into what this season has been like for Canucks fans, and what maybe their level of confidence is in their ability to get that final spot. Because, like we said, the Flames and Canucks are destined to have a mid-off against each other till the end of time. So what's it like for our frenemies on the West Coast, if you could sum it up for us?
I don't hear a peep about the Canucks anywhere. Like, sometimes I'll be downtown and like see some people walking around with jerseys, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's game day. That's like only on a home game night will I see anything to do with the Canucks.
Interesting. I wonder if that's shame, other stuff going on, or I don't know what that is. But something about the Canucks I thought of the other day I kind of want to talk about too is like, so like everyone sees this Canucks season as some massive disappointment, right? Like, oh, like they might not make the playoffs after last year. Like that would be such an embarrassment and like a franchise altering disappointment that would pivot that organization. If you take out last year, which they were a bit of a PDO darling last year, a bit of a PDO merchanty, if you just remove that and compare this season with every Canucks season since, I don't know, like 2019, 2020, like this Canucks season is right on par with all of those. Like they're on pace for about 80 points. They're up and down. They're inconsistent. Like it's pretty much every other Canucks season we've had. It's just last year with the success they had, I feel like we can kind of say this now, falsely built up that team and that fan base's hopes for what this new window of contention could be. But in actuality, the Canucks have kind of just returned to what they always have. Well, not always, what they have been the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, though, like at the same time, though, like now you have Quinn Hughes, who is fully established as one of the best players in the league, period.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to have an all-star goalie who seems to be thrown into the abyss. And the whole like mystery to do with whatever was happening in that locker room. I mean, I don't know. Like I think this was genuinely supposed to be a good team. Like I don't know if I don't know if I'm making sense there, but they had the studs.
Yeah. Well, yes, they had. If you look at what JT Miller and Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko all did last year, we would, yeah, then yes, we'd be like, yeah, this team has underperformed. Those guys are studs. But like before last season, we definitely saw those 4 guys as good players, and Quinn Hughes is definitely one of the best players in the entire league still. But again, before last season, we saw like Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes. Elias Pettersson and JT Miller as like good, definitely good players, but not some of the best in the league, I don't think. And they both have fallen off to levels of production that were below what they did in years previous. But I'm just saying, like, I feel like even though, yes, the Canucks were supposed to be better, maybe we shouldn't be as surprised as we are that they kind of fell back to earth as much as they did. It's kind of like, I hate to bring it up because it's painful, but it's like, if you do the same exercise for the Flames, like 2022, like team had over 110 points, won a playoff round. 2023 team missed the playoff, was 1 or 2 or 3 points out of the playoff picture that very next year. It was seen as a massive disappointment. Franchise altering, we got to change things around here. But it's like, if you just remove the 21-22 season from the Flames and you look at like last year, 22-23, the Canadian bubble, 19-20, like those 4 Flames teams are all pretty similar. They were all pretty similar teams. And then one year they kind of overperformed. The fan base and everybody around the league kind of builds up these high expectations of them based off of just one season. And then the next year is seen as a huge disappointment when the next year they kind of just return to the team they were the previous 3 or 4 years. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's part of the challenge of the Canadian fan base is just we want to love so bad.
Yeah, I don't know if the Flames are a good comp there because it wasn't the same team that came back the next year.
It wasn't. It's just way different in construction, but the similarity just being kind of like a group of like a team that perennially kind of underachieved, had a successful season one year, and then the results returned to what they were before. Yeah. You could say that like I would make the argument though, like the Canucks right now aren't the team that they were last year. Like Demko's gone, Miller's gone, Pettersson is a shell of himself. Like if you compare the Canucks on March 13th, 2025 to March 13th, 2024, those are 2 wildly different teams.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Like, I mean, yeah, Miller got shipped off like once the season was already, like, I say lost in the sense that like lost in terms of what they were.
Once it was clearly disappointing.
Yeah,
he was shipped off.
Yeah, and like Demko with his mystery injuries.
Mm-hmm.
That yeah,
I guess I just say all this because I feel like this race has kind of been pinned as like, oh, like the Flames are the scrappy underdogs who are like overachieving, but they're working and trying really hard and they got a good goalie versus the Canucks who've got all the talent. They just can't put it together. It's like, yes, I think last night's game shows that the Canucks still are probably the more talented team, but I don't think the Canucks are vastly more talented than the Flames right now.
Yeah, I think the key difference just being like they have like a top 5 overall player in the league.
Yeah,
like
that who is hurt right now.
Yeah,
he we've talked like, oh, if the Flames make the playoffs, Wolf has to win the Calder. I think if the Canucks make the playoffs, I don't know if Hughes has to win the Hart. Maybe I might make that argument. Like he's been that important to them, both when he's in and out of the lineup due to health and on and off the ice within game. It's like he like you said, he's one of the 5-10 best players in the league, and the rest of that team is just less talented than it was a year ago, and or is not performing like they did a year ago.
Yeah, honestly, they might be comfortably in the playoff spot if Hughes played all year.
Yeah. Which do you what? Let's play a little hypothetical here. Like, how would we? So we're kind of. I feel like as Flames fans, other than the people like me who are frustrated that we're not getting the tank we wanted, as Flames fans, there's kind of this narrative that like this season is kind of a success because at least they're in these important games in March and April. How do you think we would view this season if the Canucks were just on pace for like 95 points and they were like 4 or 5 points ahead of the Flames right now? These Flames games would not be seen as nearly as important as they currently are. And so I don't think you could say like, oh, it's really important to be in these games in March and April. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Like, how would we be viewing this season if the Flames are just exactly as they were, but the Canucks they weren't as like they were last year, but they were at least on pace for 95, 96 points or something like that. And there is a clear separation between 8 and 9 in the West.
Yeah, I mean, they may have been more active at the trade deadline, selling players, which would have been totally okay. I mean, I would have been okay this year if they traded Anderson and maybe Kadri. Kadri, I think, is just barely tradable. Anderson was super tradable.
Yeah, I totally changed the deadline. Yeah, but I'm curious, like how does it change the stretch run and how we view it? Like, because right now I feel like the Flames are, even though they're not the most entertaining team, it's like the Flames are almost appointment television because every game is massive in the standings with how tight it is. But if it was less tight, how would we be viewing these games post deadline?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's tough because like they wouldn't be mathematically that far out, but like you wouldn't. I don't know if I'd feel confident in their abilities to catch another team at this point.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thought experiment because it's all hypothetical. We've got to live in the universe we're dealt with, and the universe we're dealt with is like every game is super important down the stretch, which is fun, and that is at least the games are important. But I don't know if they were 4 or 5 points out of it right now. Like you said, they wouldn't be mathematically out of it, but it'd be difficult to envision this team closing that gap. It would just, I feel like it would change. I think it would change a lot about how people feel about this team, aside from the goalie. Because, okay, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, so I apologize in advance. But I have a bit of a problem with how this team is viewed, because I believe that Wolf has elevated this team to a place they probably shouldn't be, if it weren't for him. And the result of a goalie is goalies cover up a lot because mistakes that should have ended up in the back of your net don't, and that highlight that everyone's talking about the next day, no one talks about. If you only score 1 or 2 goals in a game, like the Montreal game is a perfect example for this. They scored 1 goal, and we came into work on Monday talking about, wow, what a gutsy effort. And it's like, if Wolf allows 2 there, how do we view that game? So, I think to sum up what I'm trying to say here is every player on that team should be thankful for the performance Dustin Wolf is giving them, because he is taking a lot of heat off of the rest of the players on that team.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And I talked about this a lot already. Would have obviously changed the approach at the deadline a ton, which I guess we can kind of touch on, because I thought about this too, and it's like I also feel like there's a bit of a narrative out there with the Flames fan base that's like, okay, Conroy traded all the pending UFAs last year. He's done. Like, that was a lot of work to do. He did it. But it's like making your team younger is kind of a never-ending evolving process. It's like, okay, yeah, he did what he needed to do then, but I feel like there's still work to do to make this team younger. Like, I think the Flames are still like the average age of the Flames is right in the middle of the league. Like, they're young by our standards because the Flames from like 2006 to 2012 were a grizzly vet team, and Brad Treliving in his last year as GM assembled a very old team. So it was an old team to disassemble, and Craig has disassembled a lot of those pieces, but just because he disassembled some of the pieces doesn't mean there still isn't vets that ideally should be traded at some point as part of this process to rebuild or retool and get younger.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like those veteran guys, like Huberdeau, he's shown signs of life this year, but God, if someone offered to take him for free, you'd jump at the chance.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and to a lesser degree, it's similar with Kadri, where it's like he's been like probably their best offensive player, but he was acquired for a contender 2 years ago, and he was the kind of minor overpay you live for if he's the last piece. So like again, like maybe with Kadri you want a bit of a return, but it's like if someone will take it off your hands, like you have to do it.
That's the thing. Like, I hear a lot like, oh, you don't want to go too young. Like, you need some vets around. It's like the Flames still have so many. Like, if the Flames traded Coleman and Kadri, who are kind of like the vets, Coleman, Kadri, and Anderson, who are kind of the vets who you see as tradable, that means like the over 30 players that they still have are Backlund, Weegar, and Huberdeau. Like, that's still like there's still vets on this team to be traded without this team becoming like, without there being no vets left. Like, that's how old of a team Brad assembled in his final years. Like, Conroy spent a whole year trading away vets. There's still vets remaining to be traded, and you could still have even some more veteran players still left to help usher in the new core. I just wanted to bring that up because you were totally right. Like Kadri was brought in to be the final piece, and with what's happened around this team the last 3 years, he's now the offensive piece on this team.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, don't get me wrong. Like if you're watching the Flames play with the hope of them winning, like he's probably the most fun to watch because like he's the one pushing the envelope and like aggressively trying to score.
I've been super critical of Huberdeau and Kadri ever since they got here because their first couple of years here were disastrous. But last night they were by far the Flames' best players against Vancouver. Like last night was kind of a cliche game for me. It's like because last night was billed as a de facto as a playoff light game, and the Flames' best players were their veterans by far and away. And it was like, yeah, okay, that's the value that these veterans have is in a playoff like atmosphere. They were clearly Calgary's best players.
Oh, are we going to talk about that? How stupid that Zary hit was?
That was bad. Like, you know, it's bad when I haven't seen a single Flames fan online be up in arms about that. Like everyone is in agreement. Like, yeah, that's a suspension and totally unnecessary. Gave the Canucks an unnecessary power play, and now Zary is out for 2 games when I assume Michael Backlund is also going to be out for the next 2 games. Totally unnecessary. And again, coming from one of Connor Zary's biggest fans, super frustrating to see.
No, it was a clean hit on Kadri. He popped right back up to go chase the puck.
Clean as a whistle, and it's like I get frustrated when NHL players try to fight after a clean hit. I understand why they do it because it's just like, yeah, I don't care if it's clean. I don't want you touching our stars. But at the same time, there's better ways for Connor Zary to do that other than elbow a guy in the head.
Yeah, like, and like the Canucks didn't technically score on that power play, but I'm pretty sure they scored immediately after the penalty ended, just before the Flames could even clear the zone.
I think so. I think that was the sequence, and he also took he took an errant high sticking penalty later in the game too. Like I said, like I'm always the guy who roots for the younger players and criticizes the vets, but last night felt like I was in bizarro land because I was like, the only guys driving that team offensively last night were the 2 guys I've been most critical of ever since they got here, Kadri and Huberdeau. And the guys I root for in every single game, Coronado and Zary, Zary especially, did not have very good games. So it was like, okay, if you're of the belief that you need vets to win or you need a veteran core to win, last night was a great game for you. My argument to that would just be, I don't know if that's what the Flames need right now, but it was a perfect example of that.
Yeah, and they're still a pretty veteran team. Like 4 of their top 9 forwards are like solid veteran guys. You got Anderson on the back end.
Uyghur,
yeah.
Yeah. I would bet I can look it up actually, but I'm pretty sure they're 4 highest forwards by utilization and their 2 highest defensemen by utilization. Anderson's not quite 30. So, okay. I'll say their 4 highest forwards all by average time on ice are all above 30. I'm fairly confident in that. I can look it up here quickly. But yeah, it just goes to show this is not a young team. It's like I was saying earlier, this is a young team by Calgary Flames standards because for the past 15 years, for the most part, it feels like the Flames have always iced one of the oldest teams in the NHL. So it's young by Calgary Flames standards, but it's pretty much an average age team across the NHL. Let's see here.
Yeah, it's not a young team.
Where'd it go? Come on. Do you have any other thoughts on last night's game?
Well, I think they took 3 penalties. 2 of them were real stupid. Like one of them, Lomberg was just flat out trying to run Hughes.
Yeah.
And they scored on that power play almost immediately.
Yeah. Pahal's penalty too, and I love Braden Pahal, but his penalty was also completely. It was just a lot of unnecessary penalties in a game where it's like, yeah. Go ahead.
At least Pahal's was a hockey penalty.
Like, it was, yeah. It
was. Like he was going to get beats in the net. So he took a penalty. Like that shit happens.
Yeah.
It was more of those other two, like where there was a decision made to run a guy or punch a guy in the head.
Yeah, and in the playoffs, like you can't just be like playoffs when the whistles go away. I feel like the whistles go away in the playoffs for the ticky-tacky stuff, but that elevates the amount of whistles we see for the obvious things. And 3 of those were completely unnecessary, obvious things. And it's like, okay, if last night was supposed to be a playoff game light, like you can't take 3 unnecessary penalties in a playoff game. Especially when your penalty kill isn't that great.
Oh my God, their penalty kill is so bad.
Yeah. Which is weird because they've got an amazing goalie.
Yeah.
And it's a team that is like has committed to defending so much. That's actually one of the more minor issues. I don't really have a lot of faith in them to pull off any kind of upset if they do make the playoffs. Is like, okay, if you're going to be the stingy defensive team, you need to be the stingy defensive team in all areas, like 5-on-5 and penalty kill, because it's like the way a stingy defensive team pulls off an upset is by frustrating the other team, and it's like, okay, I could see the Flames frustrating a team like Winnipeg 5-on-5, but in a series against the Jets, if the Jets get any power plays, the Flames' 26th ranked penalty kill gets to go up against the number 1 power play in the league. So it's like that's a good cure for frustration if you're a better team that's struggling to score. So that's kind of one of the more lower key reasons I don't have a ton of faith in this team to get to the play or to do anything meaningful in the playoffs. But that's like we said earlier, it's the alternative of finishing 9th in the West versus getting swept by Winnipeg. It's like getting swept by Winnipeg is infinitesimally more enjoyable strictly as a fan.
No, and I think I said this before. If they go into the playoff series and Dustin Wolf absolutely just steals one game, maybe on the road or something, and they lose in 5, but like we have that one shining moment where he makes like 40 saves and just absolutely steals one. Like that's carrying me through the offseason all the way till next year. I'm on cloud 9 just from that moment.
That's a really good point. Like, yeah, because the way I see the playoffs is it just comes down to will you get memories. I don't even care. This is gonna sound pathetic and sad, but it's like sometimes as a fan, I don't even care about like winning it all. It's just like, can you at least give me some memory, some positive memories? And you're right, like Dustin Wolf stealing just one game. It's like, okay, yeah, the Flames lost in 5, but we all remember what it was like when Dustin Wolf stood on his head and absolutely stole a game. Again, it's fun. That would be fun.
Like, it's kind of like 2015 when they lost in 5 to Anaheim in the second round, but we'll always have game 3.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good memory to end on. Leave people with a happy memory. of Johnny tying it and Backlund winning it in overtime. The comeback kids gave us one more comeback for the ages. But this is great, man. Thanks for joining.
No problem. Big fan of the show.